The universe held its breath. In the silent immensity, a newborn black hole emerged from a collapsed star, and, contrary to what physics predicted, it sang. Not in sound, but in perfectly rhythmic gravitational waves, as if someone had been knocking on a cosmic door for billions of years, waiting for an answer. The sensors in the observing fleet picked up the signals first, regular, mesmerizing pulses that reverberated through entire systems. No black hole had ever emitted anything like this. Scientists nicknamed it Black Dawn because its edges glowed with an impossible iridescent halo, an inverted aurora that seemed to be born from the abyss itself. The scene was indescribable. In the darkness of deep space, the black hole looked like an open wound in reality, surrounded by a luminous dance that defied all known laws. Fragments of stars swirled around, trapped in their mortal gravity, but instead of chaos, there was order. The lights flashed at exact intervals, creating almost geometric patterns. Someone, or something, was transmitting from within. The human science craft Argos slowly slid out of the warp, leaving a silvery blue trail in the void. Small compared to the magnitude of the phenomenon, it seemed like a single spark in the face of a cosmic storm. Inside, the crew members watched in silence through the panoramic viewfinder. There was no music. There was no dialogue. Just the deep sound of the instruments vibrating in unison with the gravitational pulses, as if space itself were beating an ancient drum. "My God," someone muttered on the bridge, breaking the reverent silence. The commander adjusted the expansion. The halo around the black hole revealed itself more clearly. Luminous streaks moved in synchrony, like signals, not natural phenomena. Curved power lines intertwined in almost linguistic patterns. Each new sequence was more complex than the last. The scientists on board began to exchange uneasy glances. No computer model could explain it. Black holes don't emit messages. They do not draw perfect shapes in the darkness. They do not create visual languages. Argos began to receive direct impulses in its sensors, coordinates, frequencies, and repetitions. The onboard AI warned, non-random signal detected. Patterns correspond to syntactic structures. In other words, it was language. The crew, veterans in exploration, knew they were facing something unprecedented. Not even known alien civilizations had demonstrated mastery over singularities. Whatever was inside had technology and consciousness beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The protagonist, Dr. Elias Moreau, watched in silence. A veteran astrophysicist, marked by decades of failures and personal losses, he had always dreamed of finding something that would prove that the universe was more than random noise. Now, before that luminous abyss, his eyes reflected both wonder and awe. "It's not an echo," he said, his voice low and firm. "It's an invitation." The lights of the Black Dawn flickered in response, as if they had understood. At that moment it was clear. Humanity had not discovered a phenomenon. It had awakened a dormant consciousness in the heart of a black hole. The Argos ship glided through the darkness like a silent blade. Its silvery white hull reflected the distorted lights of the Black Dawn, while gravitational engines pulsed at a controlled pace to keep a safe distance from the singularity. On the outside, it was sleek and compact, a technological gem designed for exploration in hazardous zones. Inside, it was a microcosm of human tension, where science and fear shared the same narrow space. In the center of the ship, on the command deck, monitors projected images of the black hole in real time. Patterns of energy danced on the screen like living writing. The gravitational sensors vibrated constantly, emitting deep sounds that sounded like echoes of ancient drums. The atmosphere among the crew was one of fascination, mixed with a growing restlessness that no one could hide. Commander Kara Elson, a veteran of exploration missions, observed the projected data on the holographic display. His eyes were fixed, calculating risks and possibilities. Next to her, astrophysicist Dr. Elias Moreau stood motionless, studying each pulse of Black Dawn as if he were facing a personal enigma. For him, this phenomenon was more than a scientific finding. It was the chance of a lifetime. "We're getting new gravitational waves," said Lieutenant Malik, who is in charge of the sensors. Changing. It's as if they were responding to our presence. Kara frowned. Answering? Yes, Commander. The standards are getting more complex. Elias approached the controls and projected a fractal analysis in the air. What was seen was almost impossible. Gravitational waves were forming logical structures similar to coded languages. It wasn't background noise, it wasn't instability, it was intention. In the main laboratory, teams of linguists, physicists, and engineers worked in intense silence. The ship's AI, called Helix, projected the received signals into multiple layers: waves, visual patterns, and temporal spectrums. As the lines intertwined, a geometric structure began to repeat itself, as if there were a hidden key in the music of space. Elijah was mesmerized. This is not accidental transmission, it's a protocol. Whose protocol? Asked Kara, not taking her eyes off the screen. Or something. Inside. The crew was not made up of ordinary adventurers. They were the best in the Federation. Scientists, pilots, and singularity engineers. Everyone had trained to deal with anomalies, but no one, absolutely no one, had in the manual what to do when a black hole starts talking. In the cafeteria, silence dominated the conversations. Some looked out the window and saw only the shimmering darkness, while others pretended to be busy. There was something almost spiritual in the presence of that cosmic entity. Some called it a miracle, others a trap. Elias knew that the dilemma would come quickly: advance to investigate or retreat to survive. He looked at the screen once more. The geometric structure pulsed with each beat of the black hole, almost like a heart. "If this is what it seems," he whispered, "we are about to know something that no human mind has ever encountered." Argos continued its slow approach. Outside, the iridescent aurora seemed to watch them back, like invisible eyes in the darkness. The first transmission occurred at 3:17 a.m., standard time at Federação. No beginning. It looked like just another gravitational pulse. Argos was used to receiving hundreds per hour, but this time something changed. The sequence not only repeated itself, it has evolved. On the flight deck, the lights automatically dimmed when the ship's systems detected the anomaly. Holographic lines appeared in the air, projecting a spectrogram in 3 dimensions. The gravitational waves coming from the black dawn began to form symmetrical patterns, like petals emerging in a perfect fractal. "Helix, amplify the signal," Kara ordered. "Removing background noise," the AI replied in its calm, metallic voice. The result made everyone hold their breath. On the screen, the pulses turned into structured mathematical sequences. The numbers were organized into columns, then curves, and finally, complex geometric symbols. Elias Moreau approached slowly, as if afraid of frightening a wild creature. His eyes sparkled, not with fear, but with pure fascination. That's language," he muttered. In the language lab, the experts got to work feverishly. The waves were translated into visual and auditory forms. The sound was hypnotic, a deep echo, like distant bells reverberating in a vacuum. The shapes, in turn, resembled mandalas in motion, as if gravity itself were drawing thoughts in space. As the hours passed, the patterns began to change whenever Argos responded with signals of its own. They sent out test pulses and received different responses, such as a cautious conversation between strangers. Each message seemed more complex than the last, as if someone was teaching. It was then that Malik detected something unexpected. "Dr. Moreau, you need to see that." At the center of the hologram, the patterns rearranged themselves into a single linear sequence, a series of coordinates. Elias typed in the data and projected it on a 3-dimensional scale. The result made the room fall silent. The coordinates pointed to a point within the event horizon. "That doesn't make sense," Kara said, crossing her arms. "Nothing can exist inside. It's a singularity." "Nothing that we know," replied Elijah in a low voice. Helix intervened. "Analysis of the pattern suggests that the coordinates represent a fixed, stable location. 98.7% consistency. It was impossible. According to all known physics, nothing could remain stable inside a black hole. let alone transmit coordinates to the outside. The only explanation, it was that someone had found a way to bend the laws of the universe. As the crew digested this revelation, the Black Dawn began to emit a new sequence. More intense, almost urgent. The waves vibrated on the panels, making the metal structure of the Argos shake gently. The AI translated the pattern. Authorized entry. Test started. Elijah felt a shiver run down his spine. It was not an anomaly. It was a direct invitation. The silence in the command room was almost physical. The last words decoded by the AI echoed in everyone's minds. Authorized entry. Test started. Elias Moreau stood before the hologram, observing the coordinates within the event horizon. That was not a misreading. The data was clear, coherent, and insistent. The idea that there was a stable point inside a black hole was as absurd as it was mesmerizing. Something inside called them, like an open door in the midst of a cosmic storm. Kara Elson was the first to break the silence. "We're not going in." His voice was firm, authoritative, like someone who had seen entire missions get lost due to wrong decisions. "Commander," Elias said, turning slowly, "you've seen the data. This is the discovery of the century, of the millennium. Or the perfect trap," she snapped. "No spacecraft has ever crossed the event horizon and back. Nor probes, nor drones. Nothing. If we cross that line, we're gone forever." At the communications desk, Malik was already sending urgent reports to the Federation Council. The answer did not take long. "Mission Argos. Here, Council." The signals were received. "The order is clear. Keep your distance, establish an observation orbit, and wait for reinforcements. I repeat, do not approach the event horizon." The crew listened to the statement in silence. The tension was palpable. On the one hand, absolute prudence. On the other, the possibility of responding to a call coming from within a singularity, something that defied all human comprehension. Elias stepped forward. "With all due respect, Commander, if we wait for reinforcements, it will be too late. The phenomenon is evolving. The signals are changing each time we respond. It's like a window that opens and closes. If it closes before we understand, that chance disappears forever." Kara stared at him. "What if it's a test we can't pass? And if crossing is exactly what they want us to do, to destroy us, or to see if we are worthy?" replied Elijah with an unsettling calm. "Think. Any civilization capable of existing inside a black hole masters physics in a way we can't even dream of. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have already done it." The crew divided glances. No one wanted to be the first to agree, but no one could deny the weight of what was in front of them. It was more than science. It was in contact with something that seemed to evaluate humanity. In the lower hangar, engineers have quietly begun preparing the time warp module, an experimental technology designed to protect ships near singularities. It had never been tested in real conditions. If it worked, it would create a temporary bubble around the Argos, allowing it to cross the ledge without being instantly crushed. Kara watched the preparations through the viewfinder and took a deep breath. "If we do that, there is no turning back." Elijah nodded. "I know." She was silent for a few seconds, then ordered, "Crew, start the time field activation sequence. Let's find out what's calling us." The lights on the ship began to change hue, going from cool white to deep blue. Engines of distortion came to life, vibrating like a heart about to take an impossible leap. The decision had been made. Argos would cross the forbidden line, and nothing in the universe would be the same after that. The lights of Argos went out for a moment. A dense silence filled each corridor, as if even the systems had held their breath. Then, slowly, a bluish glow emerged from the temporal core, expanding through the ship's metallic structure. The walls vibrated gently as the time distortion field formed, an invisible sphere that could theoretically create a bubble of reality independent of external gravity. On the command deck, the crew were in their seats, belts locked, stares fixed on the panoramic display. Ahead, the black aurora event horizon filled the entire field of view, an iridescent ring spinning in absolute silence, distorting the light from the surrounding stars like a liquid mirror. It was beautiful and terrifying. "Field stabilized," Helix announced. "Decoupled internal time. Margin of error, 4%. Kara nodded with a tense look. "Elijah, this is your leap." He took a deep breath, his eyes shining at the impossible. "Start crossing." Gravitational motors began to push the spacecraft forward. Outside, the space seemed to curve like a curtain being pulled. The edges of the horizon began to rapidly approach, and the readings on the panels went wild. Time, mass, and space, all known parameters, were cascading away. As the spacecraft crossed the luminous boundary, the universe seemed to invert. The stars disappeared. The ambient sound was muffled, as if they were diving into a bottomless ocean. The panoramic viewfinder was filled with undulating lights and shapes that obeyed no geometry at all. Impossible curves and angles that shouldn't exist. Elijah was mesmerized. My God, it's like entering a living equation. Malik tried to keep the sensors stable, but the data changed faster than computers could record. Argos was floating in a sea of liquid space-time, where past, present, and future seemed to overlap like transparent layers. Through the side windows, some crew members swore to see fragments of ancient civilizations, hanging cities, colossal structures, and even silhouettes that seemed to observe the ship. Everything was formed and undone in seconds, like memories projected onto matter itself. So came the silent impact. Not a physical shock, but a sudden change of perception. The instruments suddenly stabilized. The interior lights returned to normal, and ahead, the impossible was there. Argos emerged inside the black hole. But it wasn't darkness. It was a vast inverted star field, a perfect curvature where stars seemed suspended in a sphere of bent light. In the center floated a colossal structure, larger than any known human or alien station. It looked like a city made of solid light and curved matter, with towers that stretched out in directions that defied physics. The crew was absolutely silent. No words could describe it. Detecting stable atmosphere. Artificial gravity, Helix said, in an almost hesitant tone. Elijah looked at the inner horizon and whispered, "They are here." The crossing was over. Argos was on the other side, and in the heart of the black hole, someone was waiting for them. The interior space of the singularity was vague. There was no chaos, no destruction. It was as if Argos had passed through a portal to a parallel dimension where the laws of physics were rewritten with surgical precision. Ahead, the colossal structure looked like a star city suspended in a vacuum. A silent empire erected on the very fabric of space-time. Towers rose at impossible angles, connected by luminous bridges that curved the surrounding reality. The surfaces pulsed with a silver and gold glow, as if the city were alive, breathing in silence. The craft slowed down, moving cautiously. The sensors, once crazed, now displayed stable readings, as if that environment had its own coherent rules, completely different from those of the outer universe. "Not impossible," Malik murmured, looking at the data. "Just beyond us." A beam of light emerged from the city and hit Argos. Not as a weapon, but as an invitation. The light spread across the hull, scanning every part of the craft, and then gently penetrated the interior. The screens filled with unknown symbols, floating in the air like holograms without a projector. Helix tried to translate them, but suddenly stopped. "Cognitive interference detected," the AI reported. "The symbols are changing as we observe them." Elias stepped forward. "They're adapting the language in real time." Then it happened. The environment of the bridge gradually transformed, not physically, but perceptually. The walls seemed to dissolve, replaced by a vast darkness dotted with lights. Crew members felt the ground disappear under their feet, as if they were inside a mental space designed by another intelligence. In the center of this environment, figures began to emerge, not as solid bodies, but as forms made of curved light, humanoid in essence, but fluid, with no defined faces. A voice echoed, not through the loudspeakers, but directly into the minds of the crew. "You have crossed the threshold. They are the first." The sensation was intense, as if 1,000 thoughts were transmitted at the same time. The crew staggered, some holding their hands to their heads. Elijah stood firm, absorbing every shred of information. "They're communicating directly with our conscience," he said, panting. The entities of light formed a circle around the Argos, projecting visions into the crew's collective minds. Stars rising and dying, civilizations rising and disappearing, and timelines folding like paper. It was as if they were showing their cosmic perspective, a civilization that chose to live inside a black hole to observe the universe from outside time. Detecting gravitational containment field around the city, Helix reported. They stabilize the singularity. They are literally inhabiting the heart of the black hole. Kara looked at Elijah in disbelief. Have they created an empire in here? Elijah nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the luminous figures. They are the empire. The last vision conveyed was clear. A trial was about to begin. The signs were not an invitation to explore. They were a test to see if humanity deserved to be there. The interior of the bridge was completely absorbed by the luminous darkness. The crew of the Argos floated in a floorless, roofless space, where stars and fragments of time seemed suspended like golden dust. The luminous entities surrounded them, motionless, like silent judges watching newcomers to a cosmic courtroom. Elias Moreau was the first to feel the change in the mental atmosphere. The intensity of the thoughts that ran through his mind was not aggressive but profound, overwhelmingly vast. It was as if thousands of consciousnesses were observing humanity through him. A single sentence echoed in everyone's minds, an unsourced, ancient, and quiet voice. You have broken the threshold. Now, they will be heavy. Immediately, visions took shape before the crew. They saw humanity's past, projected on a cosmic scale. Wars, destruction, greed, and civilizations collapsing in repetitive cycles. Nuclear explosions looked like sad fireworks in the darkness. Devastated worlds, extinct species. The entities did not speak. They only showed. It was a cruel and true mirror. Malik fell to his knees, pressing his hands against his head. They are judging us, he muttered. Later, the views changed. They showed moments of compassion, discoveries, sacrifices, art, science, and humanity looking to the stars with hope. Children from different worlds playing under the same sky, hands outstretched between different species. It was as if the judges were weighing light and shadow, evaluating whether the human species deserved to cross that domain. Elias realized that he was being pulled to the center of mental space. The entities turned to him, not physically, but through an irresistible attention, as if they all converged in his consciousness. One speaks for many, echoed the voice. Kara tried to get closer but was restrained by an invisible barrier. Elias was left alone, suspended in the void before the entities. He felt fragments of his own life being projected. His failures, his loss of family, and his obstinacy to prove that there was something greater beyond the stars. Each memory was examined as if it were part of a large collective archive. I am not humanity, Elijah said in a trembling voice. I'm just a man, but it bears her scars, the voice replied. And then the real test began. Entities began to flood your mind with concepts, not words, but pure, vast, complex ideas. Balance, time, responsibility, and consequence. It was like trying to contain an ocean with your bare hands. Elijah felt pain, but also a strange clarity. They didn't want submission. They wanted understanding. If they are judging us, so let me speak, he said, firm now. Speak, they echoed. Elias did not make a scientific speech. He spoke about hope, about the human capacity to change, to make mistakes, and to learn. He spoke of how, despite the horrors, humanity has always sought to look up, to the stars, in search of something greater. He did not try to convince perfectly, but truthfully. The entities remained silent. The mental space vibrated slightly, like a distant echo. The answer was given. Slowly, the surrounding lights began to intensify. The crew was enveloped by a warm, almost motherly golden wave. Elias collapsed from exhaustion, but with a faint smile. He knew something had changed. The trial was over. Now it remained to be seen what the sentence would be. The golden light that enveloped the crew began to pulsate slowly, like a cosmic heart. Their mental space dissolved, and the Argos bridge took shape again around them. Alarms flashed softly, but no sound was urgent. Everything was calm. Outside, the silent empire of light remained in front of the nave, magnificent and imposing. The entities had disappeared, but their presence was still felt, like a subtle echo in the mind of each crew member. Elias was sitting on the floor, exhausted, with teary eyes. Kara approached slowly. "Elijah, what happened inside?" He took a deep breath, looking out the window at the inverted horizon. They listened, and they answered. On the holographic display, new coordinates appeared spontaneously. They did not come from Argos sensors, nor from external transmissions. They simply appeared. They pointed out the singularity, an exit route. "They are letting us go," Malik muttered. Helix confirmed in a soft voice. "Authorized distortion field, stabilized escape vector, synchronized internal time." Kara couldn't hide her astonishment. "They could have erased us from existence with a thought." "Why?" Elijah replied with a faint, tired smile. "Because they wanted to know if we deserved to remember." The craft began to maneuver slowly, aligning with the indicated route. As they moved away from the city of light, the interior of the black hole began to change. It was as if the environment was closing behind them, like a cosmic curtain retreating. Luminous towers disappeared into the distance, engulfed by the majestic darkness. The return crossing was silent. When they crossed the event horizon, the universe returned with force, familiar stars, normal readings, and the cold emptiness of real space. Argos reappeared at the same point from which it had departed, but the external time had advanced 3 weeks. For the rest of the galaxy, they had disappeared. Messages from the Federation exploded on the communications panel, mixing relief and disbelief. Argos had returned from a place from which nothing had ever returned. But the most important thing was recorded in the ship's databases: the signs, the visions, the coordinates, and the testimony of Elijah. In the post-mission silence, Elias watched alone through the front window. Black dawn still pulsed in the distance, like a watchful sentinel. He knew that even if the Federation didn't understand everything right away, that contact would change the fate of humanity forever. He touched the glass softly, as if saying goodbye to an old friend. "And let us live." Kara approached and stood next to him. Neither of them spoke. The stars spoke for themselves. The imaginary camera moves away from the ship, revealing the vastness of the cosmos. The black dawn remains in the center, majestic, like an inverted lighthouse. The sound of gravitational waves echoes like an ancient chant. If you like epic sci-fi stories, cosmic mystery, and humanity being tested among the stars, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. There are many more universes for us to explore together, and so ends Black Dawn, the story of an impossible encounter between humanity and a consciousness that dwells beyond time.